employers, the side hustlers, the dreamers, everybody who drives our success in Oregon, that they know they have someone in their corner, just someone who's looking out for them, who wants them to win. And I was born and raised here in Oregon, so I've seen a lot of ups and downs, but I'm running for labor commissioner because I actually fundamentally believe that Oregon should be the best place to live and work in this country. And that's only going to happen when we elect people who actually believe that is possible. So my day job is representing workers who are getting a raw deal when their employers are not following the rules enshrined by the Bureau of Labor and Industries. That's rules like paying their workers all their wages, or not discriminating against people based on their race or their gender identity. Rules like not retaliating against employees when they raise safety concerns. And so my tiny law firm has gone toe to toe with Wall Street's biggest banks, billion-dollar companies like Wells Fargo and their army of lawyers on behalf of an employee who blew the whistle on fraud. And we beat them in court. And I'm damn proud of that. But I still know that there are so many employees who do not know their rights. They don't know the help that they can receive from BOLI. And, I also own and operate a business, a business I started at the kitchen table when my son was just 3 months old. And I know what it's like to run payroll every month, including during a global pandemic. I've always run in a business where my employees know that they're safe, they're looked out for, that, and I pay my employees well before I pay myself, But again, I know that there are many employers that don't know their responsibilities and the help that they can receive from BOLI. And at the end of the day, I believe that we can create the type of Oregon that we want. And I think BOLI is a big part of that.
Thank you, candidate Stevens. So we are now going to begin the question portion of our forum. And the first question is, as BOLI commissioner, which aspect of BOLI's enforcement and supervision would you like to see strengthened and prioritized? Some examples, and again, this is not meant to be exclusive: civil rights violations at work, wage theft, prevention and compliance with minimum wage requirements, overtime laws, apprenticeship and training, or other items. But I would ask, which would you like to see strengthened and prioritized?
Well, I would say there's room to grow in all the divisions for sure, but for people to have a little bit of perspective on where BOLI is, historically, and where, there's room for growth, I think the first place that comes to mind is in wage and hour. So not only is wage theft a huge issue for the people who experience it, right? I mean, this could be the difference between somebody being able to make rent, being able to pay their groceries, get medicine. So when people are experiencing wage theft, that is not getting the money that they were promised, right? This is a huge issue for individuals. It's also a huge issue for our businesses because our good businesses have to compete with companies who use wage theft as their business model. And that makes it so that our good businesses are less competitive. So this is an issue that touches everybody, and it is incredibly important. So one of the, a recent study found that in the period from 2013 and 2019, substantiated wage claims, so, no dispute, this money was owed to employees. In only 16% of those cases was BOLI able to bring a penalty on those cases. So what that means is folks waited sometimes maybe a year to get an adjudication on their wage claim, and then the bad actor was not even penalized for stealing this money from employees. So a lot of folks maybe are looking at that as, well, gosh, why should I pay my employees on time if all I have to do is a year from now just pay them exactly what I owed them in the first place, right? There's no deterrent effect. There's no accountability there. And of that 16%, this study showed that only 1% of those penalties were even collected. So we know we have a long way to go in terms of making sure that there's actually a deterrent effect, that our laws are enforced, and that we collect on what is owed to employees. So that is going to be a huge focus.
Thank you. Our next question is, how does your direction and vision for BOLI differ from your opponent?
You know, all I can do is talk about my vision. And, you know, what I see is working families, small businesses are just struggling with rising costs. You know, they're struggling with inflation, the ability to meet their, you know, fill up their gas tank, right? So I want us to be laser focused on ways that are going to lift all boats in Oregon. And among those is making sure that we are helping people into a pathway to a middle-class job. And we've seen our apprenticeship programs be really effective at doing that. You know, they're effective at diversifying the workforce, and they're effective at making sure that, you know, people get into a good paying job where they can provide for their family. So expanding the apprenticeship model and making it more accessible for folks. So when I say accessible, I mean contemplating, you know, looking at what the barriers are. We know a lot of them already. Cost of childcare, transportation, the tools of the trade. So these are all places where the Oregon legislature has allocated some funding to BOLI. About $18 million of that are up for grabs right now. So if people are watching, you should go onto BOLI's website in the apprenticeship division, because there's money right now for folks to create pre-apprenticeship programs and apprenticeship programs in areas where we have really acute needs in our workforce, areas like healthcare, manufacturing, pre-apprenticeship programs in construction. So I want us to be focused on the partnerships we need at the K-12 level to start to let people know about this life-changing opportunity, that this is a great choice, a great way to earn a raise, whether or not you have a college degree. That's where I'm hoping to take us.
I'd like to piggyback on one of the points that you brought up. In the Future Ready Oregon legislative package, BOLI received $20 million in grants to support registered apprenticeship programs. How would you ensure that this grant money is equitably distributed to the benefit of all Oregonians?
I think that's a great question. That's the perfect question, honestly, because we have millions of dollars that are up for grabs, which are, you know, the intended beneficiaries of these priority populations, folks that, you know, formerly incarcerated individuals, folks that veterans, people of color. These dollars are actually the result of the racial equity task force that Governor Brown put together. And one of the things they said is, you know, let's repair some of the damage here by getting people into good jobs. And so this was a key component of that. And if we aren't a good steward of those dollars, then it's not meeting the entire the purpose of these dollars, which is to make sure that we are creating sustainable pathways for people to get into these good jobs. It would be a tragedy if this money went away and nothing was created that could be replicated throughout the system. So one of the things that I think that we really need to do is strengthen our community partnerships in order to make sure that people even know about this money. And I'll tell you, this is one of the things I've been talking about just to everybody that I can on the campaign trail is, you know, did you know about this money? Here, you know, I hope that you take advantage of it, and helping people through that process is going to be key to make sure that it's not just an insular group of folks that happen to already have established connections with the agency that know about the money and use it.
Thank you. Staying with that same theme, can you describe one specific action that you would take or policy that you would enact to advance racial justice if you're elected?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think all of us know Oregon has a really shameful history when it comes to how we've treated people of color in this state. And I think it is incumbent upon the next commissioner to uh, do something about that context. I mean, the context that we are living in, where um, there is discrimination that has been baked in to certain institutions, particularly when you think about redlining and housing discrimination. So these areas have been baked in to Oregon. So I think one of the things that we show is our commitment, for example, to housing discrimination. Right now, it is an area which I think most people would not even think of BOLI when they think of experiencing housing discrimination. So it's a huge area of growth in terms of getting the federal contract back in place to investigate housing discrimination here in Oregon and make sure that people are protected. In terms, and the other thing I would also say is I think that there are hundreds, maybe thousands of decisions that a commissioner is going to make every day. And so having a racial equity framework and asking, who's going to be impacted by this decision, who's at the table as we're making these decisions, that's going to have to be front and center in order to change the course of the institution itself.
Thank you. Our next question, in the Urban League's 2015 State of Black Oregon report, we noted that Blacks make up only 2% of the state's population. However, 40% of Oregon's reported workplace discrimination claims from 2009 until 2014 were filed by Black employees, compared to just slightly over 7% of whites. How will you ensure protections against racial abuse and discrimination will be upheld?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, this is part of what I do in my day job. So I see that myself. I see that the folks that experience discrimination are disproportionately people of color, disproportionately Black. And I also see that discrimination is taking new forms, really, where we're seeing a lot more microaggressions. We're seeing more subtle forms of bias that people are experiencing. And I mean, to be fair, there is still also the quite blatant, disgusting racism that is a relic of our shameful history. We're still seeing that as well. But I think what we need to be thinking about is discrimination is different than it was. I mean, it appears differently than maybe 20, 30 years ago. We have intersectional discrimination. We have people with, Black women, for example, experience discrimination in a different way than folks with different intersectionality. And recognizing that and bringing that into part of our process as we are adjudicating discrimination claims, I think is going to be really important for us to start doing.
Thank you. Our next question. During the 2022 legislative short session, House Bill 4002 was passed, which put protections in place for farm workers. This summer, we experienced heat waves, and we are currently experiencing fires that make farm work conditions extremely hazardous and dangerous. If you were elected as commissioner of BOLI, how would you hold employers accountable to ensure the safety measures implemented in House Bill 4002 are followed during dangerous times like this when outdoor conditions place workers at risk? How would you ensure that employers won't cut wages and hours as a punishment for employees who are reporting safety conditions that they're concerned about? It's a long question. I'm happy to repeat it if I need to, but let me know.
Okay. I mean, just starting off with the first or the last part of the question, if an employer cuts somebody's wages or diminishes their working conditions in some way in retaliation for them speaking up about a health and safety concern, or saying, look, there's this OSHA rule now, it says I need to get adequate water, adequate breast breaks, whatever that may be, it is unlawful. It is unlawful to retaliate against a person for doing that. But I also want to recognize, of course, I've represented a number of workers in this position where they, sometimes undocumented workers or workers that are otherwise quite vulnerable. It takes quite a lot for somebody to blow the whistle. You have to have a lot of security to do that. And I think we have to recognize that when someone does that, BOLI needs to actually be there for them, right? Like BOLI needs to actually investigate their concerns and view retaliation for what it is, which any of us who've worked, we know exactly what retaliation is and what it feels like. And in the legal world, there are a couple of it's called adverse actions. So retaliation can take many forms, like someone getting fired or someone getting demoted. But as we get into adverse actions that are further away from termination, sometimes it is more difficult for people to understand those as actual retaliation. So to me, that's just a matter of additional training to think about what retaliation means for our investigators and to fully enforce the existing law. I mean, that's all it is. This is just existing law, and that is the job of BOLI, is to enforce it. But the other thing is, if BOLI isn't able to enforce our laws, we're not going to be able to build the trust with the community that they should even come to us in the first place. So I really see that as a foundational building block of what needs to happen here, is so that folks even feel comfortable enough that their rights will be protected, that they even come to us in the first place.
Thank you. You mentioned earlier on some of the work that BOLI has the opportunity to do in catalyzing apprenticeship programs. But I wanted to ask, what industry would you plan on targeting while distributing grant money for apprenticeship programs? Industry or industries?
In terms of administering the grant program, I will just follow the statute. It's written out what the priority populations are and the industries that the money is available for, pre-apprenticeships in construction, healthcare, manufacturing, and then apprenticeships in healthcare and manufacturing. So you can see that, healthcare has had an acute crisis for quite some time, and we're starting to see, really exciting apprenticeships being built by SEIU and AFSCME in long-term care and mental health, behavioral health workers. So really exciting things are starting to be developed in the healthcare field, but there's still plenty more. So I hope anyone listening along still is encouraged to go and look at that. And then, manufacturing is a huge economic driver for us in Oregon. We're getting a lot of investment through some of the federal infrastructure and the CHIPS Act and the Inflation Reduction Act. So I think there'll be a lot more focus on making sure that we are providing a pathway for workers to get really high quality training in exactly what the employers are asking for.
Thank you. You've spoken a lot about the engagement of populations and employers, but how would you strive to create a culture of pre-compliance with the target populations and the stakeholder groups that you work with, and to help ensure that business and public entities stay within the swim lanes that are being constructed by BOLI and the state?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because of course we know if we just empower our businesses to do the right thing, a lot of them are going to do it. We've got 500,000 businesses here in Oregon. And though right now we've only got about 6 people in BOLI's technical assistance division, which is the division that is tasked with helping employers comply with the rules. So certainly a lot of area for growth there, and making sure that the regulations that BOLI enforces are really simple for people to understand, really accessible. I mean, really just simple stuff like, if you go on BOLI's website right now, you get an enormous universe of laws to think about, which ones of these apply to me as an employer. So just helping people kind of close the universe, okay, you're in this industry, you got 6 employees, this is really where you need to be thinking about. And then, using our data, I'm sure that BOLI can look back and see, well, these are the areas where we're seeing employers get it wrong pretty consistently. I have my guesses on where those areas might be, but certainly we can look at the data and say, look, I think maybe our employers need to learn a little bit more about last paycheck laws or disability laws or OFLA, whatever it may be. And then just, have the relationships where we can be working directly with the business community and provide that technical assistance. Really simple stuff like we get like an email alert when the law changes, or have forms where it's checklists, really, really simple, because I think people want to do the right thing. We just got to make it easy for them. If we make it easy, best case scenario, we don't even get to the point where people are needing to file complaints. It lifts all boats if everyone knows exactly what's expected of them.
Thank you. That focus being on pre-compliance, let's see if we can look at the other end of the spectrum, and that is just the volume of civil rights cases that are brought to the attention of the Bureau. How would you confront just bringing together the resources to address the multitude of civil rights cases that are currently on your docket?
Well, for context, BOLI used to be a bit larger than it is now. So about less than half, it has about less than half the people it did 40 years ago. And of course, Oregon's only gotten bigger during that time. And so, I've heard investigators telling me about caseloads of 50, 60, 100 cases. And we know that's not sustainable. We know that that isn't going to provide the quality that any of us want for our investigations. One of the things that Commissioner Hoyle, the current commissioner, has been really successful at is getting the legislature to allocate additional dollars for this very reason. She's increased the budget by 30%. So going from about 100 employees to 130 employees. So we'll look to see that making a dent, and then we'll see if we need even more. I'm hopeful that if we invest in the pre-compliance we talked about, that will affect our caseload numbers to some extent. But I mean, to be clear, I think that building trust in communities, we or making things more efficient, we may indeed find that we see more cases. I know when BOLI upgraded its wage and hour intake process, the wage and hour complaints actually went up. So we know that when the agency is more accessible, people tend to use it. So I want the agency to be more accessible. I want people to be able to use it if they need it. So we will have to see if we can continue to at this current trajectory, but I anticipate the funding will be one of the bigger items that we need to revisit.
Thank you. The next question is, from your perspective, how would you define accountability as it relates to equity and racial justice on the part of employers across the state?
Yeah. You know, I would love for this to be a conversation that doesn't start and end with my definition of accountability, because I do think that it takes more voices than just mine to be at the table to come up with that definition. I mean, I can tell you from having spent over a decade in the civil justice system, prosecuting cases on behalf of people, we are able to meet some goals, you know, through that system, but the end result in a lawsuit is money. That's it. That's the only thing that a person can get is money. And that's a really blunt object, because having your dignity, you know, your identity harmed, and your personhood questioned. I mean, money doesn't compensate those things. They're not equal. So one of the things that I appreciate about the position of BOLI is you do have tools beyond just money. You can ask people to do more work beyond paying somebody for the harms they've caused. You can ask them to do training. You can, have a process of accountability that goes beyond just the end of the case through, for example, an equity office was created as a result of a BOLI conciliation process, so I would like us to be, as a community, to really think about what all might be on that menu of ways to truly repair harm.
Thank you. And actually, my next question will really piggyback on a number of your responses. How do you think co-enforcement, where government works in partnership with worker centers, legal advocacy organizations, unions, and other community-based organizations, what role can that play in reducing the number and the scope of complaints or violations, that type of collaboration?
Yeah, I think the co-enforcement model has really been a response to the situation that we find ourselves in, which is not a lot of resources and a lot of work to do. So the agency, like I said, has not grown with Oregon. So when we think about other options to just get our laws enforced, I think co-enforcement is one of the things that's on the menu for that, for that task. I think that people should recognize that our laws are the product of a democratically elected government that got together. They heard all the testimony, they heard the pluses and minuses, and they said, yeah, we do think it is important for there not to be discrimination in the workplace or in public spaces. You know, we do think that people should be paid all of their wages, right? And so if we believe that, you know, that those laws should be enforced, I think that we should be open to all the options to make sure they're enforced, not only for the people who are harmed by them as individuals, but how it harms our community. You know, it harms our community in the ways that we've already talked about, and you know, depriving people of their ability to make rent. You know, their ability to participate in gainful employment. If they're, we especially see a number of people that you know are terminated because they have a disability, for example. So these are all places where we've said we want these folks to be protected, and we also our good employers are already complying with these rules, right? So why should we give bad actors a competitive advantage by not enforcing our laws?
Thank you. Well, I have gone through my questions and the questions from the audience. You see, I'm juggling different lists here because there's multiple inputs, but we appreciate your responses. And now we would invite you to offer a closing statement. And again, you have 3 minutes and the mic is yours.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the very thoughtful questions, and I appreciate the chance to be with you all tonight. You know, I would say that I'm really proud of the campaign that we're running and the coalition that we've built. You know, I've spent over a decade working with the Bureau as an attorney, representing both workers, helping employers comply with the laws. We have built a really, you know, bipartisan and diverse coalition of folks that are supporting my campaign. I'm endorsed by the last 5 labor commissioners, Democrat and Republican, endorsed by the Independent Party, over 100 organizations and elected officials. And I'm proud of that, not only because they believe that I am the best candidate for this job, but because we've got a lot of work to do, right? And many hands makes light work. And so we're going to have a coalition that is ready to roll up their sleeves and help make this Bureau what it can be, which is it can be a life-changing opportunity for folks, like I said, to have a pathway to a working, to a family wage job. Just really simple stuff that we all want for Oregonians. We just want, you know, a good job where we can pay the bills, where it's safe, we're not discriminated against, and then, you know, we can have a little piece of what we all want as Oregonians. It's really simple, and I'm excited to do the work.
Thank you. As the Urban League's Commissioner for Bureau of Labor and Industry Forum comes to an end, I want to give a special thanks to our audience members who submitted questions, to our partners at LNS Captioning and Open Signal, who are airing the forum tonight. And we also want to thank our community partners who supported this event. Thank you again, candidate Stevenson, for participating. And we hope that you will continue to stay healthy and well on the campaign trail. I want to extend my appreciation to our co-host as well, and the community groups who help us to uplift civic participation in the African American community. Audience, please remember that the Urban League is a nonprofit organization that relies upon donations to be able to serve the community. Learn more about the League's fantastic programs and powerful advocacy by visiting our website at ulpdx.org. If you're able, we also invite you to donate. On September 22nd at 6 p.m., the Urban League is hosting their Equal Opportunity Day Gala. This virtual event is a chance to gather with Black leaders, partners, educated officials friends, and all those dedicated to empowering African Americans and others to achieve equality in education, employment, health, economic security, and quality of life. It provides a forum for the Urban League to educate civic, community, and business leaders on the critical needs facing the region's Black and African American residents. All funds raised through this event will provide crucial, unrestricted revenue that directly supports Urban League wraparound programs and services, impacting more than 10,000 individuals each year. Your support is an investment in our community, in our robust wraparound programming that empowers and changes lives. On behalf of the Urban League President, Nikenge Harmon Johnson, the Board of Directors, and all of our members, I thank our audience and candidate Stevenson for participating tonight. If you're not a member of the Urban League, I welcome you to join. If you are, please renew your annual membership. Visit our website at ulpdx.org to join the movement for justice and equity in all. Also, if you need assistance voting during the primary or registering during the general election, staff at the Urban League are ready to assist you. Please reach out via the website, social media, or call the office directly at 503-280-2600 for assistance. And with that, I am Michael Alexander, former president and CEO of the Urban League, and it is my pleasure to bid all good night.